Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Halfway Through the Heat, a wrestling podcast coming to you from New England in the person of me, Tom Breen, and from Japan in the person of my co-host, Joe.
Hey there, everyone. It's a rainy morning here in Tokyo.
It's a rainy evening here in New England. That's crazy. Today we're going to talk about the big exciting news at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. We're going to talk a little bit about Destination America. We're going to talk about maybe the most famous bad wrestling moment in history. And we're going to talk about Hulk Hogan's greatest role on film. But why don't we start things off as we do every week from here on out by saying something positive about Raw. Now, a lot of wrestling podcasts talk about Raw. A lot of people want to run down Raw, the flagship wrestling program in the world, but not us. We're positive people. We're glass half full people. We're going to say something positive about Raw.
All right. Do you want me to start off with something positive about Raw?
Why don't you start off with something positive about Raw?
Okay, I have two positive things about Raw. Um, okay, the first positive thing is just a goofy one, but there was this guy in the audience near the mic who desperately wanted to start some kind of chant throughout the night, and you could always hear him yelling a wrestler's name or something solo throughout the night, and it would never catch on. And every time I heard him, I had a goofy smile on my face because I thought it was the goofiest thing ever. I was like, "Keep on trying, you shooting star."
That's awesome.
But also, I will say that as much as people on the internet seem to have hated it, I really thought the John Cena promo was good.
I agree. Yeah, I don't know why people. I mean, maybe at this point people are just sort of blinded by their Cena hate, but I like that promo. I thought it worked well.
I thought it was really good. It was like after watching, I was thinking like, I think I should give John Cena more of a chance.
I think too often he like lapses into like the goofy joking Cena, which is kind of annoying. But I think like he seemed like he meant business last night. I agree. I thought that promo was really good.
Yeah, and like also a lot of people were complaining like he pointed out that kid with cancer in the audience, and I'm like, dude, that's a bad thing. Like he's supposed to be a face, and like it's kind of a good thing. I mean, that kid is probably like that's he's gonna remember that his entire life.
Seriously, yeah, that probably made that kid's night, and more than that. I mean, yeah, I mean, is it a cheap way to get a good reaction from the crowd? Sure, but that's what wrestling's about.
Yeah, I mean, every wrestler does that. Like half of the wrestlers on the card came out when they cut their promo mentioning like, great to be in this town or whatever. It's the same kind of cheap like pop that would they would get from that. But
Yeah, agreed.
the uh, the Cena promo, I thought like I don't know, it was good to me. I thought like it made him like even though he lost, it made him seem kind of like he won.
Yeah, I agree.
And I
Um,
think that's good considering they have another match coming.
yeah, I mean, it set up the feud between the two of them nicely. For next month or this month, I guess, the Money in the Bank, and it clearly lit a fire under Cena. Like he came out, he was mad. I mean, I thought it played well with the character. It played well to make people take Kevin Owens more seriously because it's not just some guy that Cena's laughing about, which he occasionally does in his feuds, which drives me crazy. Yeah, people complaining on the internet just they want something to complain about. They don't say something positive about Raw, which we do every week.
Yes. So there's my positive things about Raw, though. So how about you?
So I like the John Cena promo as well, but I think for me, my positive thing about Raw was the tag match pitting the New Day against the Primetime Players and Dolph Ziggler. It was a fun match, and all those guys are pretty good. And it also gave time for my favorite underappreciated wrestler, Titus O'Neil, to shine. Like I think Titus O'Neil is a potential stud. I think if it was the '80s, he'd be in the upper mid card. He'd be like conversation for the Intercontinental Championship. He'd be a great like mid South guy, like a Bill Watts guy, because he's huge. He can do a lot. And he's not bad on the mic. So I hope that this sets up an ongoing feud with the New Day, who are a great heel tag team.
Yeah, that wasn't a bad match. Um really like it's weird to say this because it seems like counterintuitive, but the New Day is like really doing. I mean, they're doing good on the on Raw. Like the the pay that pay-per-view match sucked, but
Yes.
that wasn't on them. It was on like the the entire concept. I guess we should mention the pay-per-view that was like this Raw was a blow off from anyway. Um, yeah, what did you think of the pay-per-view? The on Sunday. What did you think of that?
I thought it was. It felt, except for the Cena Owens match, to me it just felt like an episode of Raw. Like nothing really spectacular. It was okay, but it wasn't. Um, that the Elimination Chamber used to be one of their signature events, and the whole thing felt like an afterthought to me. I mean, especially having the purpose of the Elimination Chamber be awarding the Intercontinental title, which at this point is like it's like the old European Championship. They might as well not have it.
Man, I want to say like in theory, Elimination Chamber is cool, but the way they set it up was awful. Like, there was two Elimination Chamber matches, and you had the Intercontinental one and the tag team one, and the tag team one is like too many dudes, and it's just like it wasn't good because like nobody had a chance to shine. It was just like okay, some dudes are climbing the cage, one dude is stuck on top, then they're like slamming each other through walls and stuff. That's like essentially all you got, and there was never a point where you thought like okay, New Day is gonna lose. They were 3-on-2 at the end. It was like impossible for them to lose, and so it kind of kills the match. You kind of already know who's gonna win, and the Intercontinental match there was worse because even though like there were options for who was going to win, they set it up in a way that like most of the people you knew weren't going to win. Like they'd lost. They like three of them had lost, or maybe four of them lost on the Raw the week before.
Yeah.
Like two people who were supposed to be in the match. Like okay, they lost the week before on Raw, but they're totally going to win it this week over seven other guys or whatever. Not going to happen. And like they did set it up in a way that like okay, how they have you remember War Games?
Yes, I do.
Like War Games was always like the people in War Games. You always had a lot of people in there who you had like no idea who was going to win because there were a lot of people in there who were legitimately had a chance. So it was
Yep.
exciting. Like you'd go into it and you'd be like, is Arn Anderson going to win? Is Ric Flair going to win? Are they going to have to fight each other? Or like, there'd be stuff like that. But, there'd be tons of dudes in there that could also beat those guys. But when they had the Elimination Chamber, there was like, you know, two dudes who had a legitimate chance of winning essentially, and everybody else was just kind of there to fill time, and it really felt that way. So it just kills the match. Like you just don't care. You just sit. It's just boring until the ending. And
That's been that's been kind of a problem with the Royal Rumble the last 2 years too. Like in advance who's going to win, and so the whole thing just feels pointless because like guys come out and you think like, well, that guy's not going to win. Like there's no chance that Curtis Axel's going to win this thing. Why is he even coming out?
yeah, well, like the thing is like the Royal Rumble has gone from a thing where like a lot of people have a chance of winning to being this thing where like what wacky person are they going to get to show up in the middle of the Rumble?
Right.
Like that's a lot of the reason why people watch it now. It's just like, you know, is Brutus the Barber Beefcake going to come out this year?
Oh man.
You're like, is Jimmy Snuka going to come out this year? It's that kind of thing because like you said, the vast majority of the people in the match, have no chance, and it's kind of a bad idea. Like in in like the old rumbles, there were a lot more people who had a chance of winning. They were built up in a way, where like everybody, like not everybody, obviously, like Dino Bravo wasn't going to win, but like, you get some people who would show up and like you'd be like, well, I guess Mr. Perfect probably has a chance of winning, but like, Hulk Hogan is in this, Macho Man is in this, there's a lot of people, and this is like in the, you know, obviously this is the 80s, but um, it's quite a different thing now where it's just like, okay, Curtis Axel's going to come out and he's not going to win. And, you know, all of these people are a lot like that. It's just kind of, I don't know. It's not the right kind of build up. And I think the WWE, I mean, a lot of it probably has to do with not a lot of time to build up anything. They had like 2 weeks to build up people, and it's not really going to happen in that short amount of time. But man, that was disappointing. So I'm gonna go and say that yeah, that the Owens Cena match was good.
Yes.
That was pretty good, and I think the main event was good, even though the ending was stupid.
I liked the main event too. I mean, it didn't like knock my socks off, and those two guys are capable of a knock your socks off match. But it was a good, solid match, and I thought the ending was the idea that Dean Ambrose would win the championship was great. It was one of those surprises that you'd think like, oh man, that's why I keep watching wrestling. And then the Dusty finish, which really, to be fair to Dusty, is also a Vern Gagne finish. Um, it just felt a little cheesy. Although I guess Vern would like wait until the next day and have like some commissioner figure show up and, and revoke the win. Yeah, I mean, the main event was good. The Owen Cena thing was great, and because um, John Cena did the honors for a guy whose first real match in the WWE, um, very unselfishly lost clean to Kevin Owens. There was a lot of debate online after that when the last time John Cena had lost clean was. I don't know. I'm no John Cena historian. Um, but I think it's a clear sign of how big the company is on Owens, and also sort of how they're kind of looking beyond Daniel Bryan now to who might be the next guy. You know, I mean, I think they realize Bryan's got health problems, and it probably won't be him. So who's coming next?
Yeah, that's a good thing. I think that's true. They did give him a solid win right there. I mean, it automatically puts him at the top of the card.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic, and it was a shock. I mean, I have to confess, I didn't watch it live because I was at a wrestling event, but I was getting text messages. You know, people were saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe it!" You know, Owens won. It was the rare thing that really seemed to excite people, and actually, some of the reaction online was pretty interesting. We could talk about that a little bit. I Jim Cornette, who is a wrestling genius, one of the greatest of all time. Um, has been a doubter of Owens for a long time, back when he was Kevin Steen working in Ring of Honor.
Yeah, okay, but I think like Jim Cornette has explained himself. Like he did a thing on his podcast saying like, I never said Kevin Steen wasn't a good wrestler. Like he's like, yeah, we put the championship on him in Ring of Honor. We didn't think he was a bad wrestler. What his complaint was that, when he was dealing with Kevin Steen, is that he never wanted to listen to you. Like he never wanted to listen, and he wasn't in good shape. And like they told him to get in better shape, and he came back like 40 pounds heavier. So they were like, you know, he was saying like, if you keep this same kind of attitude and this same kind of shape, you're not gonna go anywhere. And then like obviously he's saying like, yeah, he's got better shape, and he's obviously not being a jerk because he's in WWE now. So he's probably, that's probably the reason he's doing so well. I think, that makes sense because if Jim Cornette did, I've heard Jim Cornette say that, originally, like Kevin Steen wasn't going to go anywhere or whatever, but like that was his reason. And I guess like, if you changed those things, then like that pretty much ends what he said. I mean, it's the same like his thing with Sami Zayn, where he said Sami Zayn wasn't going to be popular, but he was saying that because he was El Generico, and he was like, yeah, if he got rid of the mask and changed his name, he would probably be a lot better. And then what happened? He got rid of the mask and changed his name, and now he's like a lot better off. So I think,
Although, in fairness, I mean, I have no idea what he's like, behind the scenes, but like Kevin Owens is a lot like Kevin Steen. I mean, he's in better shape, but like he's not in Vince shape. Like he's not like the kind of guy that Vince normally likes to see as a top star in the company. He doesn't have that bodybuilder look at all. I mean, he's a fat guy who's wrestling in basketball shorts. I mean, like
yeah. No, that's true. I mean, but he's saying like, um, the difference between Kevin Owens and Kevin Steen at the time when he was dealing with Jim Cornette is apparently pretty big.
Yeah, I have no. I mean, I don't know. I hear different things about Cornette, and again, Cornette's a genius, but I think in a lot of ways, sort of the business has passed him by. I mean, he's very much old school, and like he kind of doesn't get how things have changed. I mean, he's always talking about like, yeah, if we did things like they were in 1985, well, I mean, nothing is like it was in 1985. There's no industry that works the same way it did in 1985.
Coca-Cola is the same as it was in 1985.
I
Actually,
beg to differ.
it's not even true because that was the year of New Coke.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It probably wasn't actually. I'm just guessing, but like it seems about right.
Yeah, and I mean, I have like DVDs of Jim Cornette talking about the territories, and like he was so great as a manager and as a running his own territory in the early '90s, Smoky Mountain. But he's got like these weird feuds with some indie stars like the Young Bucks and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. And I have no idea what's behind it, if it's just a personality thing or what. But he was on Twitter. He was pretty defensive because a lot of people, as soon as Owens won, people were like tweeting at Jim Cornette like, "What do you think about that, corny?" And also defensive, Vince Russo.
Well, Vince Russo, on the other hand, is just Vince Russo. He
Not a wrestling genius. He posted. It's worth seeing if you go to his Facebook page, and I urge you to. Vince Russo posted this long thing about it because Vince Russo had also said he didn't think Sami Zayn or Kevin Owens would ever be popular. And he's also said he's never watched Ring of Honor once because he doesn't like. Vince Russo says he doesn't like wrestling. I mean that I don't know what to do with that. But so and he went on this long screed about how he thought that people were saying he was wrong. Vince Russo was wrong. He thought that the people who were cheering on Kevin Owens thought wrestling was real, and he's like, "I got to break it to you, wrestling's fake." And I mean, it was such a, even for Vince Russo, it was a rhetorical low point.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. I saw what he posted because you reposted it. But I was yeah, that was like crazy sour grapes because it was just like, what are you talking about? You're on this like weird tangent because like you were just wrong.
Yeah, he just yeah. Russo, always worth watching. Supposedly he's going to be interviewing Billy Corgan soon, and only good things can come of that. But the other reaction I want to talk about briefly on this was there were sort of like the IWC nerds, like the real smarks who've liked Kevin Owens for years, are acting like, you know, the war is over and the Indies have won. And I don't know if that's true. I think this was, one match that's really a build to Money in the Bank. And we have no idea what's going to happen. We have no idea what the plans are for Kevin Owens after Money in the Bank. John Cena is not going to keep getting beat by Kevin Owens over and over. I fear a wave of disappointment, unlike anything we've seen in a long time from internet wrestling nerds, when Kevin Owens loses.
Yeah, it's gonna be a crygasm of infinite proportions. It's gonna be there's gonna be there's gonna be some real hate when he loses that Money in the Bank, probably because you know how WWE books everything is like everybody has to get back their win, so everybody's nobody gets above anybody else.
I know, but I mean, if this means that Owens is coming up to the main roster for good, I don't know what it means for NXT. That's an interesting question because if Owens is out and Zayn and Hideo Itami are hurt, which they are, like suddenly the NXT is looking pretty threadbare.
It's looking very Finn Balor-ish.
That's right. It's gonna be a lot of Finn Balor, Tyler Breeze 5-star classics coming up, which is, I like both those guys a lot, but I mean, I don't know how often people want to see them wrestle.
Well, I mean, they can have Samoa Joe do stuff.
That's true. That's interesting news. He is now signed full time, and the word is that he was originally sort of like part time. He had kind of a Rhino contract with NXT, but his merchandise has been selling really well, and so Triple H or Vince or whoever makes these decisions said, no, we got to bring this guy on full time. So now Samoa Joe, he's going to work out some of his last independent dates, and and then he's going to be a full-time NXT wrestler, which I think should be interesting. I actually saw him on Sunday night. That's why I was not watching the Elimination Chamber, and he looks great. He looks best shape he's been in years, and I think he's excited to be out of TNA. He was just kind of floundering there at the end, as sort of everyone does in TNA. I'm excited to see what Samoa Joe can do in NXT, and I'm psyched that they're letting him keep his name and his gimmick, and they're not making him change. I think that's like a real recognition of his stature as a wrestler, and he could be great. It could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that could be good. But who knows what they're going to do with the rest of TNA? It's just going to be all women's matches.
Yeah,
Not TNA, NXT.
NXT. That would be good, actually. I mean, I would. That would be smart because the women's division, without those guys at the top of the card, the women are the best thing in NXT. Their tag team division's okay, but it's a little, I don't know, it's a little thin right now.
But man, seriously, the the women's matches in NXT are like night and day compared to what we saw on Raw. So like,
oh yeah,
and the pay-per-view, actually, that pay-per-view match was awful.
I actually thought the Raw match was better than the pay-per-view match.
It was, but that's not saying much.
No, that's true. The pay-per-view match, the women's match, was one of the worst women's matches I've seen since I started rewatching WWE. Like it was just dreadful. It's like people didn't know what they were doing. I mean, it was hard to watch.
Yeah, it's not good.
No, it's not. But since we're on the subject of Samoa Joe and what I did with my weekend, I wanted to bring this up briefly. I went to an indie show in Providence, Rhode Island. It's a promotion called Beyond Wrestling. And it's sort of interesting because it seems like to me that it could be kind of a prototype of what we've talked about before, about how wrestling sort of needs a new demographic to be interested in it, to be viable. This was, I guess there were about 300 plus people there, and in a music venue in Providence called Fete Music, where they normally have like kind of indie rock shows. And it was a hipster crowd. I mean, this is the first time in my life I've seen a Slater Kinney t-shirt at a wrestling show.
Wow, that's a demographic change.
That is a demographic. There was a Morrissey t-shirt.
Worn by you?
There were a lot of guys with like well-sculpted facial hair, and there was like a luchador-themed grilled cheese food truck outside. It was very hipster-ish. Even the people with replica belts had hipster replica belts. Like the guy, I saw a guy who had a replica NWA 10 pounds of gold. Like that's hard to come by. If you were a hipster and you wanted a replica belt, that's the one you'd get. You wouldn't get the WWE replica belt. So it was weird. I mean, it was a weird place to see a show because there are no seats. It's kind of like going to see a punk show. Everyone just crowds around the ring in this case, which makes for sort of entertaining moments when guys come out of the ring. Because it's like when somebody like falls down in a mosh pit and the whole crowd moves back,
Yeah.
But it was interesting. It was Samoa Joe wrestled Chris Dickinson. It was a good match. Kimberly was there. She wrestled the Dragon Shinron. That was a really good match. Nick Gage from CZW was there. It was fun. But the kind of thing I'm interested in is the sort of crowd reaction and how indie wrestling is often compared to punk rock. I've done it myself, but it sort of differs in some important ways. Like almost no one in wrestling thinks about it in terms of like selling out, right? Like there's interest in both in the independent world in the WWE product, which I don't think is true in punk rock at all. Like the punk rock audience is not by and large interested in mainstream music at all. Like if there's a punk show on the night of the Grammys, nobody is thinking like, oh man, what am I gonna do? Do I go out to see Rancid play or do I stay in and watch the Grammys? Whereas I'm sure there are a lot of people there, including myself, who are sort of like, oh man, this is a choice between Elimination Chamber and this. Because I don't think people see it in the same way, which I think is sort of healthy. There were 3 guys who kept chanting "You sold out" at Samoa Joe, and they had a profane anti-NXT chant, and I have to be honest, like I don't understand that at all. Like to me, that reaction is just so petty and bitchy, and whiny. Like, why are you begrudging people who are sort of deciding what's best for them and their careers? I mean, like, what does it cost you if you see Samoa Joe wrestle in NXT instead of Beyond Wrestling or something?
Yeah, that is kind of weird. It's weird because it's not the same dynamic as music is. So, it's not like there's a huge like wrestling industry filled with all these like kind of shady companies that are, you know, gonna screw people out of money or whatever. Wrestling is like one big company and a lots of little companies, and it's a kind of a different dynamic, and it's not like even that one big company is well regarded by everybody.
Right.
So it's the it's not exactly the same kind of situation as music. It's not the same business environment either. So there's not really a kind of sold out. It's you know since since there's been big wrestling promotions, everybody in a little promotion's goal is to make it to a big promotion. You've heard every wrestler talk about it. It's like, I my dream is to be part of the WWE or WCW when it was around or whatever. Like that was the big time, you know what I mean? Like they finally made their goal in their career. And I think
Yeah.
like with independent music, for example, like if you work hard, it is viable to make money by yourself. Whereas like in wrestling independence, like it's not as viable. Like people can do it, but they're still wrestling for somewhat major promotions. It's not like the like the Young Bucks. It's not like they're wrestling at Beyond Wrestling every week. They're wrestling in Japan, which is they're wrestling in the largest promotion in Japan. It's not even like they're not wrestling at Michinoku Pro in the train.
Right. Right. Yeah, and there's also like a political content to punk rock and even to indie rock that it doesn't really apply in wrestling. Like one of the reasons punk bands couldn't get signed to major labels in the 80s is because they had sort of lyrics and they had songs that were about unpleasant things or politically charged things. And it was this idea that you'd have to compromise sort of what you believed in order to be on a major label, or you'd have to compromise your sound, like Husker Du and those bands. They sort of smoothed out their sound, and then they were sort of palatable for Warner Brothers. Whereas like in wrestling, it's not like it's not political. Like there's no message to wrestling. Like it's not the same kind of thing, and it's weird for me to see that behavior. I mean, the three guys got booed by the crowd, and also two of the guys looked like Megadeth roadies from 1987, and one of them had an Oz Rotten patch, so that you know where they're coming from.
Oh.
Yeah, they're coming from that place. Um, but I wonder if that's going to be like a feature of. I mean, if sort of hipster-ish people who are not normally wrestling fans get more and more into wrestling, I wonder if there's going to be this kind of reverse snobbery about people who go to TNA or WWE or even at this point Ring of Honor. Because let's be honest, Ring of Honor now has a legitimate claim to be the second largest promotion in the United States.
Yeah,
larger than TNA.
I would go as far to say that they are the second largest promotion, only because they've got a ton of syndication stuff going on, plus the same TV deal as TNA. So I guess they win. I mean, there's no way around it.
You've actually segued perfectly into our next segment, which is news. And by now, I'm sure everyone who's listening to this knows that it was actually the day our first podcast premiered, so we missed it, which is the news cycle. It was announced that Ring of Honor will be on now, starting this week. Ring of Honor will be on Destination America the hour before TNA starts. And this is one of the biggest stories in the wrestling world right now, because Destination of America is in 57 million homes, even though it's still kind of a smaller outpost in cable. And this gives Ring of Honor the largest audience it's ever had. And the question is, what does this mean for TNA? Which, as we said last week, it's been announced, or not announced. Dave Meltzer broke the story that Destination America plans on dropping TNA in September. So the question is this basically Destination America saying to TNA, meet your replacement? We're going to have wrestling, and it's not going to cost us nearly as much as you guys do. Or is this like a last chance for TNA? In theory, could Ring of Honor as a lead-in build a big enough audience to make TNA worth Destination America's while?
It's a good question. I mean, I guess we won't really know the answer until September or slightly before then when they announce a cancellation or not. But yeah, it seems like um, man, putting on Ring of Honor right before TNA is like total kick in the nuts. It's like here you go, train your replacement.
Yeah. Yeah, and now the interesting thing, because you were saying you've been watching some TNA and you've been sort of impressed at least at the matches, is that right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like it actually, as the idea that it could be like here's a chance for TNA to get some more viewers from Ring of Honor. Like it's possible, and I wouldn't have been able to say that like last year or so. But recently I've been I watch TNA every week, well almost every week whenever it's on at least, and it's not a repeat. Um, well, I watched, watching TNA recently. There's been some really good matches on there, and like for example, this week I mentioned to you earlier, like I watched TNA and Raw, and there's a match on the TNA show, which was a tag team match, the Wolves versus the Dirty Heels, and that match was way better than anything that happened on Raw or the rest of the TNA show. It was just like so much better than everything going on that it was really good. It was better than a lot of the matches I had seen on Ring of Honor, and I thought like, wow, if TNA is going to have matches like this, they have a chance of getting people to continue watching from Ring of Honor because it was really good. It was well paced, lots of cool stuff going on, lots of real like tag teamwork going on. It was such a good match, and I thought like TNA is kind of turning around, except for like the rest of the show, and um, but match wise, like I can't say that TNA is as bad as it once was. I mean, really, like recently, TNA has been a lot better in terms of matches. I'm like, it's not any better in terms of like pretty much everything else on the show. But yeah, I think the matches have gotten a lot better, and I think a lot of people who watch Ring of Honor are pretty similar to me in terms of the stuff that they like, and the stuff that I like is the matches. Like I don't really care about the kind of supplemental story stuff going on in the background. Like I just want to see two guys or two teams come out and have like a really cool match. And TNA like has pretty much proved to me that they can provide that. All they have to do is work on the rest of the crap.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that match was really good. The Wolves are so fantastic. In fact, Eddie Edwards showed up at this Beyond Wrestling thing I saw on Sunday and had a really good match with Donovan Dijak, who is in Ring of Honor. Um, and yeah, I mean, I really think there's a chance for TNA here. I mean, part of this is, or part of the question here is, how much money is TNA costing Destination America? Because Destination America is paying for production costs on TNA, and they're not doing that with Ring of Honor. Basically, they're just paying broadcast rights fees to Sinclair Broadcasting, which owns Ring of Honor. Sinclair is just going to make these shows anyway because they have their own syndication. And so for them, it's just a new revenue stream plus added exposure of the show. And for Destination America, it's a wrestling show that costs significantly less than what TNA costs. So I don't know what the audience number for TNA is, where they get to the point where they're worth the while to Destination America. But I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that with a strong lead in from Ring of Honor, which has loyal viewers who just like watching wrestling, that TNA could see their audience share increase over the next couple months. And I mean, that would be a good thing. Like, I don't want to see TNA get canceled. I don't want to see any wrestling show get canceled.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, even though like I think of TNA as like the worst of all the promotions that I watch, like I don't want to see it go away only because like that means less places for people to get exposure and less wrestling on TV, less shows to watch. And as much as like everybody does complain about TNA, like it's capable of providing good wrestling every once in a while at least, and recently more than once in a while. So, I feel like I hope that TNA doesn't get canceled, even though it seems like it's probably going to. I hope it actually does kind of pick up due to Ring of Honor being with it, and they, get a little like a 40-second wind or whatever.
Yeah, I mean that's true, and we shouldn't underestimate TNA's incredible ability to survive. I mean, they should have died several times before this, but they keep going.
Yeah,
Um,
it's true. It's honestly surprising that they're still around. So I think, having that option, having like that kind of proven ability to survive is also a benefit for them.
um, the second piece of news this week that I wanted to talk about was Hulk Hogan has been giving interviews saying that he wants a retirement match at WrestleMania 32, which will be in Texas next spring. Is this a good idea?
Well, okay, it depends on what kind of match it is. And I'm saying this because um, the match that Hulk Hogan had with The Rock was, I want to say it was a good match. Not in terms of wrestling, obviously, but in terms of like having that kind of story and the psychology of the match, it was a really good match to watch. It was exciting to watch, even though like Hulk Hogan is way old and neither of those guys really do many moves.
Yep.
That match still ended up being good. So I think like it's possible, like depending on who Hogan is has his match with and what kind of match it is, it could be all right. Like it might be exciting to watch. And if they're gonna put him in there with someone who's boring or doesn't know what they're like, doesn't know how to like have the same kind of excitement level in a match as someone like Hulk Hogan, it's not going to be good. It's going to be boring and it's going to suck. It's going to be like what you'd imagine a match from a 65-year-old Hulk Hogan would be like. But I think having someone who can, you know, physically carry the match, but also like take advantage of that. It's Hulk Hogan. You know, psychologically in the story of the match, it could be good. It's possible to be good. More so, and like I say this because like I could imagine it happening. I can imagine there being a good, like at least a fun match to watch with Hulk Hogan, unlike what we mentioned last week with uh, what's Kevin Nash.
Oh man.
Like,
Yeah.
because I couldn't imagine a good match with Kevin Nash. Like and I want to point out that out of like all the comments we had on the last podcast, nobody even attempted to point me towards a good Kevin Nash match.
The offer still stands, by the way. If you're listening to this and in your mind you've got a library of great Kevin Nash matches, just tell us what they are.
Yeah, we should put a bounty on it.
Well, you're much more optimistic than I am. I think at this point Hogan doesn't have anything to offer. I mean, the Rock match I agree was pretty good as a spectacle, but that was a long time ago. And Hogan is gotten on in years and like he kind of hobbles out to the ring now. I just don't know that it would be anything other than sad at this point.
Yeah, okay. Like I kind of understand that because I remember when we saw Jimmy Superfly Snuka in like at an indie show, and
Oh yeah.
um, it was more sad than anything.
Yes.
Like watching him wrestle was like scary kind of because he looked so brittle and like he still wanted to jump off the top rope and
Yeah.
stuff, and
He
you're
went
just
up for the
like, oh, don't
Superfly
do it,
splash.
Superfly. But
Yeah. The
um,
when Flair had his retirement match at WrestleMania against Shawn Michaels, Flair was in better shape, and I think Flair was always sort of a better. I mean, I know Flair was always a better wrestler than Hogan. Um, but also like Michaels was sort of ideal for that because he could carry a guy like Flair at that point to a good match. Who would you raise a good point. Like The Rock was sort of a good choice for that match because both those guys work really well in front of huge crowds, and they both understand the spectacle of it. I mean, at this point, who would be the guy? Would be the natural choice to have the final match against Hogan? Like, it would be John Cena. There's nobody else in terms of stature who'd be big enough where it would make sense to have a match against Hulk Hogan, a retirement match against Hulk Hogan. And
Yeah, but it doesn't really make any sense.
no, it doesn't. Yeah, why would you have two faces fight each other? And yeah, I mean, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, that's
You
the
know?
thing. Like, with the match with The Rock, Hogan was the heel.
Yes.
I mean, he was Hollywood Hogan then in that match. But like the thing with it was is you can tell it was a good match because towards the end, like people were cheering for Hogan.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it's the kind of thing where like they they did something that like both of them got way over because of it in that match. And it was like it wasn't a good wrestling match. I'm not saying it was like a spectacular match to watch, like if you're just watching for the wrestling, but like if you're thinking about the psychology of the match, like it's masterwork level. You're like, it's kind of amazing that you can get people to care enough about someone who is like obviously too old to be wrestling.
Right.
And I think, it would be it's hard to think of someone who could do that again with Hogan. Um, and because it can't be just Hogan. Like you can't put him in there with Bray Wyatt and hope it ends up all right.
No. No,
Um,
actually, after SummerSlam, when Lesnar had that amazing win over Cena, Hogan was saying he wanted to have a match against Lesnar, and that would be like the scene in Rocky Four where the Russian guy kills um,
Apollo Creed.
Apollo Creed. Like it would be horrible to like it would be like terrifying to watch.
Yeah, I would because like I couldn't imagine Hogan taking one suplex, never mind 20.
No,
And
no,
like, yeah, it's the kind of thing where like, yeah, it does. I'm a bit conflicted on that only because like I think it's possible for him to have a match, but I think the opponent is probably not around. There probably isn't one.
no, no,
Yeah.
unless they bring The Rock back.
Unless it's
Um,
Sting.
right, Sting. Yeah, but at this point, I don't even know if Sting. I will say this: I liked Sting's match against Triple H in the beginning. I thought after they started like all the run-ins made it a clown car, but in the beginning, I thought those two guys were having a good match. It was like watching. Essentially, Triple H was playing the part of Ric Flair in a Ric Flair Sting match, and I thought it was going over really well. But I don't know. I don't know if Hogan can do that. Like, I just think you got to put him with the right person, and I'm not sure the right person exists at this point.
Y-
Vince McMahon, huh?
Yeah, no, they already did that.
70. He'll be 70 years old at next WrestleMania. 70-year-old Vince and like 66-year-old Hulk Hogan. That would be
Yeah,
rough.
but that would be rough. Yeah, I think I mean, unlike most internet wrestling people, I am a big Hulk Hogan fan.
It's true.
I like Hulk Hogan a lot. I think I think his wrestling is underrated, um, which I think almost nobody would agree with. But it's the kind of thing where I think he could do a match. I just don't think there's really a good opponent for him. I just can't think of anybody. Um, that's pretty much it with that. I would like to see it if they had a good opponent, but otherwise it's going to be kind of a sad sad occasion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think like coming out and talking to the crowd and cutting a promo would be fine. People want to see Hulk Hogan and cheer for Hulk Hogan, but nobody wants to see like a guy with bad knees kind of hobble through a wrestling match.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
mean, he's just old. He's just so old and so beat up,
yeah,
and like it's the kind of thing where I think he doesn't get enough. He doesn't get like a lot of credit for still doing it. Like considering like the way people describe him, like he's like can barely walk and stand up and
right.
stuff, and you're just like, okay, he can barely walk and barely stand up, but he can still come out to a wrestling ring and take a bump. Like,
Yeah.
he it doesn't seem like a big deal, but like it's a big deal when you're like nearly crippled
Oh yeah.
and
Oh my God.
you're still doing it like without complaint. It's it kind of shows a mark of like, that he's really trying at least. And I think he doesn't get actually credit for that, even though, you know, people have a lot of complaints about Hulk Hogan.
It's true. I have a lot of complaints about Hulk Hogan. But I mean, yeah, I think in some respects he's sort of underrated or not appreciated as much. Although definitely appreciated more now than 15 years ago. I think like time away, absence makes the heart grow fonder. And at the end of WCW, there was such a bad taste in everybody's mouth that people were just tired of him. But now he's sort of a beloved elder statesman because everyone forgot that he was in TNA. Everyone's forgotten TNA. Really, that's TNA's problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, Sting was in TNA for like 10 years and nobody like it's just as if it didn't happen.
Yeah, um now that you say it, it doesn't even seem like that's possible.
No, I know. It's like he went through like different incarnations, and I mean, it was just Sting was a big part of that promotion for a decade, and yeah, it just seems unrealistic now. You're like, no, it's like a dream, like, oh wow, wouldn't that be weird if Sting had been in TNA?
Yeah, wouldn't it have been weird if Sting was in TNA dressed as the Joker?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. The Heath Ledger Joker.
Sounds like
and
a
Eric
fever.
Bischoff was there, and the Hulkster was there. It was such a weird dream.
See, sounds like a fever dream.
Well, TNA is a good segue for what we're going to talk about next. This is a occasionally recurring segment we make called Best Worst Things. This is when we're going to talk about things that are terrible, objectively terrible, objectively bad things. Not like war, but things in wrestling that are bad, that don't go well, but for some reason are among our favorite things.
Yes, there are a lot of these things where you just right when you see them that like no, this is never going to happen. Nobody's going to like this for real. And you'll look at it and you'll think, how did this get past any type of quality control?
Right.
And I think a lot of those things, some of things happen and they come out and they're just kind of meh and they just kind of die. But some things come out and they're so bad, they're so awful, or like they're just so blown. They just don't like it. Just doesn't work the way people are expecting it to. That it becomes like this kind of legendary level of bad stuff that happened in wrestling. So in this segment, we're gonna talk about some of those things intermittently, not every episode, but whenever we feel the need to. But we figured we'd take this opportunity to talk about one of like the legendary ones, the one that pretty much everybody should know, the the kind of I don't know, the granddaddy of all the crappiest segments in wrestling. And yeah, so this is going to be the great fall through the wall of the Shockmaster.
The Shockmaster is sort of the platonic ideal of best worst thing. So this was, cast your minds back. This is WCW in the early Ted Turner era. So this is pre NWO. This is pre. I don't even think Hogan was in the company, right?
Oh, I don't remember actually. He might not have been actually. Now that I think about it.
So it was 1993, right? So there's an angle where Sting, Dustin Rhodes, and Davey Boy Smith are going to be an 8-man War Games match against Sid Vicious, Vader, and Harlem Heat at the upcoming Fall Brawl. So the three good guys need a replacement for Road Warrior Hawk. Right? And so they say they're going to have a mystery partner. This is something that happened a lot in WCW at the time when Ole Anderson was booking things. So they're going to have a mystery partner. And for weeks they're kind of teasing who's going to be the mystery partner. And so now this is a good illustration of how to do a best worst thing, right? You're building up fan anticipation. So people are talking about it. Who's going to be this mystery partner? And because it's wrestling, people are talking about famous wrestlers. They're like, "Oh, is it Ric Flair was in WCW, but because he had still some contract issues with WWF, he couldn't wrestle. So he's just doing like talk shows. So like, oh, is Ric Flair going to come out? Is it going to be some babyface that everybody loves? Who's it going to be?" Well, the answer was revealed on an episode of A Flair for the Gold, which was an interview segment hosted by Ric Flair. This was at Clash of the Champions 24. So Sting and Davey Boy Smith are out there talking to Ric Flair, and then Sid and Harlem Heat come out and demanding to know who's your mystery partner. And Sting says, all I have to say is our partner is going to shock the world because he is none other than the Shockmaster. And before we get into what happened next, we should talk about why that in itself is a bad idea. No one has ever wrestled in WCW under the name the Shockmaster. It's not something you're not going to get a crowd reaction by saying it's a new guy who you've never heard of, right?
Yeah.
Ideally, you'd say it's Dusty Rhodes or it's whoever, and people would go nuts because it's someone they recognize. But instead, they created this character that no one had ever heard of, and then what happened next?
Well, you have to keep in mind that they had the Shockmaster talk.
That's right. Leading up to this, they'd heard the voice of the Shockmaster.
Yeah, so the Shockmaster had talked. They had heard the voice of the Shockmaster, and the voice is actually done by Ole Anderson, and through like a voice changer or something. It's not anything that's going to be memorable. So it's like this mystery: who is the Shockmaster? And the Shockmaster makes his big entrance. They pan over to this yellow wall that's by the interview, and out bursts the Shockmaster. But he burst through the wall Kool-Aid Man style. But someone forgot to mention that they nailed a board to the bottom of the wall to keep the wall from looking flimsy, and tripped right over the board, fell through the wall. The Shockmaster helmet flies off. It was a total mess. It was like if you wanted to introduce like your big, huge, like powerful opponent, and he just like falls flat on his face and his helmet falls off. And the helmet was like this goofy, glittery, silver sprayed stormtrooper helmet.
It was in fact a Star Wars stormtrooper helmet that they had bought at a toy store, painted it purple and covered it in silver glitter. It's like a kid's Halloween costume if the kid was going out as a club kid stormtrooper.
Yes. And the wrestler who was actually the Shockmaster was do you know his name? I know he was Tugboat.
Fred Ottman.
Fred Ottman, who became Tugboat later on in WWF. But yeah, it's like one of the most like cringeworthy TV moments because it's like an obvious screw up. But, like, it's funny because it's obviously a screw-up. Like, the helmet falls off and he catches it and quickly puts it back on. And, like, you can hear in the background, Davey Boy Smith is like, he fell on his ass. Like, right. You can hear that it's a mess up and they're totally laughing about it in the background. And from there, like, the Shockmaster is done. You can't do anything with the Shockmaster. It's done. It's like the kind of thing where the entire heat they were trying to build up for that, like the great powerful Shockmaster, was just gone.
Yeah. Fred Ottman later said of the debut, quote, "They put me in a stormtrooper mask, which they painted and covered in glitter. I couldn't see a thing. I got to the wall and put my hands up like a double axe handle and bust through. The top broke perfectly, but the bottom didn't give. The momentum took me through the wall and to the floor." And also, he was, in addition to the stormtrooper's helmet, he was just wearing jeans and no shirt, but had a vest. So and he's kind of portly. So it's like a fat guy with no shirt on and a vest and jeans and this ridiculous stormtrooper's helmet falling face first. And then you hear like this monster voice because they were going on with the promo as he's scrambling to his feet.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because the Shockmaster himself wasn't providing the voice, they just continued on like nothing happened, like while he was trying to adjust the helmet and get everything going back to normal, and you could still hear the voice of Ole Anderson continuing the Shockmaster promo, like he didn't just fall on his face coming through a wall.
Yeah, they tried to salvage things by rebranding the character the Super Shockmaster and just giving him kind of a construction worker gimmick, but that didn't work.
No, it didn't work. It's one of the quintessential failures in terms of like wrestling things. There are a ton of them, and like I wouldn't even say this is the worst one.
No.
It's just the most famous and most kind of representative of the kind of things we want to talk about in this segment.
Yeah, we'll post when we post the episode on the website closetofanxiety.tumblr.com. I'll post a link. The Shockmaster thing is readily available on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor, look it up on YouTube. It is laugh out loud funny. See if you can find a clip where they have the announcers. Jesse Ventura was one of the announcers, and they're trying not to laugh, and they're trying to carry on as like, Fred Ottman scrambles to his feet and tries to put his helmet back on, and and just hearing Ventura's voice as he says, "What an entrance!"
It is really funny. Like you find the longest clip of it you can find and just watch it because like the entire thing is incredibly good.
Yeah, and a real illustration of the doldrums that wrestling was in the early '90s too. Like just the whole set, like everyone's kind of ridiculous looking. That like the angle itself was dumb. Why are you bringing in this like character who doesn't have? I mean, the whole thing was it was just a sign of why people were sort of burned out on wrestling in the years before the NWO and the Monday Night Wars. And this kind of ties in nicely. This for our last segment tonight. This ties in nicely to things we were talking about earlier because it's bad, and it also involves Hulk Hogan. This is Wrestling Movie Night. As we record this in the United States, it is June 2nd, which means that is the 26th anniversary to the day of the release of No Holds Barred.
Oh, No Holds Barred. So No Holds Barred, for in case you don't know about No Holds Barred, it was essentially like a movie produced by Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan in the kind of height of Hulkamania days in 1989, and it's essentially just like a way for them to kind of get Hogan out there as an actor and get WWF into producing movies, and really it's a nightmare in all types of ways.
But it is the plot. The plot follows Hulk Hogan, who for some reason is not called Hulk Hogan in the movie. He's called Rip Thomas, and he's the WWF champion. And there's a struggling TV network called World Television Network, headed by an evil executive named Brel. And Brel tries to bribe Rip Thomas to coming to World Television Network. And this is a weird prefiguring of what would actually happen, minus the bribery, when Hulk Hogan would leave years later, would leave the WWF for Ted Turner's WCW. But anyway, so Brel comes up with his own wrestling program because he can't have Rip. He comes up with his own wrestling program, as you would, called Battle of the Tough Guys.
Yeah, but Battle of the Tough Guys in the movie is not exactly like a wrestling program. It's more like redneck bar fight UFC. There's a ring, but nobody does wrestling moves. It's just like rednecks punching each other, essentially, is what it is. And I mean, he makes. I took one for the team here and rewatched the movie on yesterday. So on the exact 26th anniversary, I rewatched the movie just for this segment, and he literally makes the program by going into this redneck bar, and there's a bar, like kind of an underground fighting thing going on, and he just recruits everybody there to be part of the show. That's essentially how he makes the Battle of the Tough Guys. It's and then he like puts a thing out on TV saying like you can win $100,000 if you win the Battle of the Tough Guys. That was it.
And the top tough guy, the guy who wins this tournament and becomes like Brel's right-hand man, is Tiny Lister,
yes,
as Zeus.
Tiny Lister, also in Friday.
Right, that's right. So there's this. I don't want to say complicated because No Holds Barred is not a complicated film, but there's this sort of song and dance where Brel and Zeus do things to make Rip's life unpleasant. Everything building up to a final battle.
No, it's convoluted in all the goofy ways that you could think of, like cliche kind of action movie things that the villain would do. So first the villain, the guy who runs the TV exec, he sends a woman to try to seduce Rip, and she accidentally, like, instead of seducing him, falls for him really, and so she can't go through with the plan. So she becomes his real life girlfriend or whatever. And then Zeus shows up. They like make this TV spot where Zeus shows up in the middle when he's like helping kids in a park or something, and challenges Rip. And Rip is like, wants to fight him, but he can't because like there's all the kids surrounding him, and he like wants to be a good example. So he, they humiliate him on TV, like making him look weak, and then like it gets more comically cliche where like the TV exec sends like thugs to rape Rip's girlfriend, and and Zeus beats up his brother and paralyzes him. And from there, like now Rip is into it. They want to fight. They try to set up a match, and of course they set up the match, but the TV exec also does another cliche thing where he kidnaps Rip's girlfriend before the match and gives him like the ultimatum, like you have to lose or we're going to cripple your girlfriend too, or whatever.
Um, yeah. So ultimately, spoiler alert. Rip wins. He beats Zeus in this big climactic battle, and then Brel electrocutes himself, as one does. Um, the movie is, it's not good. It's
I want to point out something also about Rip. His finishing move is even less spectacular than Hulk Hogan's actual finishing move. Um, Hulk Hogan's finisher is not like a great finisher to look. It's like a boot to the face and a leg drop. But Rip's finisher in the movie is a double axe handle.
right, right. Which you'll recall from our earlier segment is how the Shockmaster burst through the fake wall.
Yes. So, he- um, yeah, it's not exactly the most powerful finishers ever, but he does finish off Zeus eventually in the movie with the double axe handle.
It's and that's another question. Like, why didn't they just make his finish Hulk? Why didn't they just make him Hulk? I have no idea.
It's weird because like everything else as part of the wrestling promotion is the WWF. Like the announcers are Mean Gene
Jesse
and
Ventura.
Jesse Ventura. The ring announcer is Howard Finkel. Like the promotion is called the WWF.
Yep.
Like why not just be Hulk Hogan?
There are a number of other wrestlers in the movie too, in smaller roles. Stan
Yes,
Hansen's in it.
yes. Because I watched the movie, and I haven't watched it since I was a kid. And I went through it, and I was looking through, and in the first part of the match, there's like right in the opening thing, there's like a match for the championship, the WWF championship against Rip and a wrestler named Jake Bullet. And I'm looking at Jake Bullet, I was like, who is that? And then like I'm looking at it, and I noticed it's Bill Eadie, who was Axe of Demolition.
Yeah.
So the first match is Acts of Demolition, but like later on when they do the battle of the tough guys, like there's all these kind of wrestlers that show up in the battle of the tough guys as the redneck UFC fighters or whatever they are. There's one called Klondike Kramer who was Pete Doherty, who is like the Duke of Dorchester. He was like a kind of really low card, like almost like an enhancement talent for the WWF in the 80s, maybe early 90s. If you watch WWF TV, like you might recognize the name. Like he's not like a super. I don't think he ever was a title holder of any kind or anything. I think he was like always really low card. There was another wrestler named the Headbanger, who was Maniac Joe LeDuc, who I think like most famously he had a big kind of feud with Jerry Lawler, but he also I think more so than his wrestling, he's famous for all like the crazy kind of stunts he was doing. Like, Jimmy Hart would come out and be like, "Watch this wrestler, stop a moving car from crushing him," or something, and the car would be like, um, you know, spinning its tires with him holding it up against a wall or whatever, or like he would be pulling a bus with a rope, stuff like that. He'd like be doing these crazy promos where he would be cutting himself with an axe. Um, So Joe LeDuc, you look him up on YouTube because there's some compilations of him doing all these crazy stunts, and it's kind of interesting to watch because it's like really like 70s wrestling. Um,
Jeep
there,
Swenson.
yeah,
Jeep Swenson was also in it.
Jeep Swenson is another one who hilariously was. This ties right into um, the topic of No Holds Barred because Jeep Swenson, who most people I think would know not as a wrestler but as the guy who played who was it, Bane in the Batman movie.
Not. I should point out, not the popular Bane in the recent Batman movie, but in the corny 1997 Batman and
Yes,
Robin.
yes, in Batman and Robin, not the not the new Bane, but the old Bane in the goofy Bane. But he actually was in the movie, but he also wrestled in this like weird angle that they did in 1996 WCW with Hogan. This is before the NWO, obviously, because it's like Hogan and the Booty Man and Macho Man are fighting Kevin Sullivan and Ric Flair, and they want to like bring in people to help them fight against Hogan and the Booty Man and Savage, and they bring in Jeep Swenson as originally named the Final Solution, but obviously it was changed because that's probably the worst name you could possibly pick for a wrestler to the
Yeah,
Ultimate Solution.
we need to stop just for a second. They really called the wrestler the Final Solution, which was what the Nazis referred to. That's how the Nazis called their plan to kill all Jewish people.
Yes.
His gimmick wasn't that he was a Nazi, but still, they called him the Final Solution.
Yeah,
I'm
he
sorry, proceed.
he looked. I mean, he looked like any member of the Dungeon of Doom would. He was just like a huge guy with a painted face, but he came out as the Ultimate Solution with Z Gangster, who was Zeus. I mean, it was Zeus, and he did all the same Zeus moves, and he looked like Zeus, and he had the Z carved into the side of his head, like Zeus. It was the weirdest kind of angle to resurrect because when No Holds Barred came out, WWF actually did this match, not the same match, but it did the No Holds Barred the movie, the match, and it was a steel cage match with Hogan and um, who was that?
Brutus
Brutus the Barber
Beefcake.
Beefcake, who is also the Booty Man, versus Randy Savage and Zeus in a steel cage. And you're laughing because it sounds ridiculous, and it is ridiculous because like that has no right to be a good match, and it's not a good match. And whoever thought it was going to
No.
be a good match, I think nobody did. But there it was. That match happened, and you can also watch that. You should watch that on YouTube just to see how legendarily bad it is. But Zeus
That
has doesn't know any wrestling moves. Like he literally does like a kind of double chop and a choke, which is like his only moves in the movie too. So it kind of makes sense.
right.
But yeah, imagine this match. It's like imagine how bad the movie we just described to you is, and then imagine the match afterwards. It's just as bad, if not worse, because it doesn't have like goofy comedy scenes.
Yeah, and that was actually part of a pay-per-view with a pretty good undercard. Dusty Rhodes wrestled on it, and Mr. Perfect wrestled Ronnie Garvin. But the longest match of the night, believe it or not, was not the steel cage tag team match. It was the Ultimate Warrior and Dino Bravo, almost going 15 minutes.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
Um, that's surprising. I'm not surprising that Dino Bravo. I mean, surprising that Dino Bravo was in a match with the Ultimate Warrior on a pay per view, but surprising that the Ultimate Warrior lasted 15 minutes.
I know, right? How did that happen? I mean, my God. But yeah, so that was in December. That was when the movie debuted in June. Like for the summer, like Zeus would show up on WWF TV and things, and like would challenge Hulk Hogan and say he should really be getting top billing and not Hulk Hogan because Zeus was the star of the movie. And so it all led up to this blow off match with Savage and Beefcake, and then you're right, and then weirdly resurrected in WCW. And that was the where Jeep Swenson was involved. Jeep Swenson, also you may remember, World Class Championship Wrestling. He had a feud with Bruiser Brody in the '80s. but that was called the Alliance to End Hulkamania, which sounds like a really weird, 501c3 group.
Yeah, it sounds
Um,
like a mothers group or something, like Mothers
yeah,
Against Drug
yeah,
Driving to End Hulkamania or something.
yeah. And but again, that was another good illustration of wrestling before the NWO, how corny it was. We'll probably talk about that on Best Worst Things, the Dungeon of Doom in the future, because there were some moments. I won't get into them now, but there were some moments. Do yourself a favor, just plumb
Oh,
around YouTube a little bit for Dungeon of Doom and Hulk Hogan.
yeah, type Dungeon of Doom and Hulk Hogan, and that's all you need to know. That will
Yeah,
show up eventually. Definitely, that will show up eventually. It's not hot. That's all I gotta say.
no. Yeah. Um. All right, I think that's maybe all the time we have for the week.
Yes, I think
Um,
that's about it. Do you have anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to say?
No, just that if you're looking for us online, you can find us on Joe's YouTube channel where this will be posted. Soon we'll have this on iTunes. You can also find us at closetofanxiety.tumblr.com. And if you want to cuss me direct, I'm on Twitter at TJBreen.
Yeah, I'm also on Twitter, but I rarely look at it. So if you do tweet me, I'll eventually see it, but it might take me like a day or two to even realize that I have a message. So, but I'm on Twitter at X Cornmuffin X, which is my YouTube channel. Um, but that's it. That's eventually we will be on YouTube, iTunes though. So once we figure out how that works, we'll
Yeah, so
be.
you'll be able to download this and listen to it while you're doing your CrossFit workout like Seth Rollins.
Yeah, you can you can listen to it while you're um, getting ready for your no holds barred match against Zeus.
Yeah, well, you're shaving the letter Z into your head. Listen to us in the background.
Yeah, although you'll
All
have to
right.
do it with only one headphone in because
Yeah, that's right.
you don't want to cut the cord when you're cutting the Z in your head.
All right. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening. And this once again, this has been Halfway Through the Heat, and let's do this again next week.
All right, see you guys next week.